everybody, this is Miss Cassie Graham. She's from Elgin FFA. She's going to talk to us about large-scale ag mechanics projects. So, take it away.
All right, guys. Glad you all can make it. I'm happy to be here. Hopefully, you can walk away with something that might help you feel a little more comfortable about taking on a larger project, even if you don't have any experience with it. That's kind of my goal. So, by no means am I a trailer expert or anything else. It's just been a very trial and error and learn as I go type of deal for me. So I'm starting my 11th year of teaching. I started in Boise City, Oklahoma, in the Panhandle, taught for 6 years there, and then in Garber for 3 years. Both programs that had small shops, very limited access on tools. So I started with a lot of the smaller projects. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. Ooh, I don't know if this is going to work. There's nothing wrong with that, but what I started with was picnic tables, horseshoe projects, and I was really proud of those for my ag mechanics background and what, the experience that I had and what I could make. So at the time I thought, man, this picnic table, it's going to eat me alive, and it was a simple project. But for the students that I had, that was more of a challenge. And then the horseshoes, it's a small project, but also a project that it has its challenges as well when you're trying to get things level and square and things to line up and look good, and painting. So we started with that, and then I moved to Elgin. If you know, Jerry Renshaw was there for many years. I did not know Mr. Renshaw until I went to Elgin, and I learned about the rich history of the Ag Mech program there after I had accepted the position, and I thought, man, I'm in trouble. I'm in big trouble, because my motto was, if it had wheels or a motor, it's not happening. I'm not building it. And that quickly turned around when I went to Elgin. And so we went from how it started to where we ended up. So my first year, they didn't have the OIE AgMech contest, and they introduced that last year. And thought, well, we're going to have to do something to get this program back, to kind of get it back where it was when Renshaw was there. So we built the big orange trailer smoker, and that was the first trailer that I had ever built. The first axles that I had ever had to buy, the first biggest metal that I've ever bought. That was the biggest thing I'd ever made. And so I had a lot of mentorship with that, learning how to do that. And then we got, I think it was 4th overall at OIE, and my senior boy, he told me, he said, that's not good enough, we need to win. Well, most Oklahoma ag teachers are competitive. It gets the best of us sometimes. And I said, okay, I agree. We got to find some project that we want to do, and let's win this thing. So if you're like me, I have Google. He had TikTok. We had talked about some things, and he said, Ms. Graham, I think I found the perfect project for this. And I said, no, I did. So we're two different things. And I said, well, let's meet at the ag room. We need to pick one, and we need to get started. So he showed me his. I looked at my deal, and I laughed. And I said, well, it's the same trailer, just different places, I said, mine's a trusted source, yours is TikTok, but we'll go with mine, it's better. But so we went with this trailer. It turns out that one of the woodshop teachers there in Elgin actually owns the patent to this trailer. So boom, I had a resource right within the school on building the trailer that we built for OIE. So it was a project that I never dreamed that we would have finished, especially being the second trailer that I've built in my lifetime. So it's where we started with. I was real hesitant. I had to learn a lot. So hopefully this workshop, it's not about just building trailers, but maybe some ways of including larger projects within your classroom and not letting your teaching, your classroom instruction be thrown to the side because you've got this major project going on. And that's really easy to do, and we'll talk about that. So selecting a project, this was the first thing to do. Like I said, I had a senior that was really active, and we kind of knew what we wanted to do based off the year before, but we needed to do something. But we needed an end goal. So now we have this really cool OIE AgMech contest that you can enter. Has anybody, some of you have entered it. Has anybody not? Or is it a goal to enter it? Some of you. So maybe you're making it for a contest. We all have labor auctions or craft auctions, so you're making something for that. Or it may just be a student project that your student wants to make and take home and use it themselves. So these are all types of projects that you can do. But first you need to figure out what's our end goal? What's our deadline going to be? Because the OIE contest happens in March. You know, if you're Tulsa State Fair, that's going to be in the fall. If it's a student project, you may have all year. So there's just different things that you need to figure out before you get started. Finding blueprints. This was the single most challenge that I had. Finding blueprints for a shop project was really hard. Now, you can go to this trailerpartsoutlet.com and you can get on Amazon and you can actually buy blueprints for trailer projects. So we were going to do that, but they're like $80 depending on the project. You can figure that out. And then what I ran into was none of my students knew how to read blueprints, like real blueprints that were coming. They're challenging to read. They were challenging for me to figure out because I never really read, you know, student drawings, easy, but sometimes some of them can't draw. So, but you know, blueprints was a challenge. So that's one way. But for me, for on the silver trailer that we did, I knew where there was one built. And I knew him. I called him and I said, we want to build this thing. Can we park it outside? Can we pull one of yours in and park it outside the ag building? And then can we replicate it? Sure. Well, he owned the patent on it, so the only thing I had to do was make sure I paid the patent fee. He made me pay the patent fee so that if we made it, built it, and changed anything on it, we were legally safe. So I would put that out there as something I didn't think about at the time, is patent fees. So I think it was $500, I think, is what they charged me for the patent fee. They're made in Mexico, but they come up and they put the lights and everything on here. So we parked it outside the shop. I had kids go out and we took photos. They crawled under it, around it, on it, all kinds of photos of all different positions of the trailer, how it worked, and then print those photos out. So we all have photos on our phone, but they're small and you got to zoom in, right? Well, the problem is we didn't have blueprints for this trailer either, which meant that we had to go out and we had to literally measure every part and figure out what's the thickness, the gauge of the metal, how long is the piece, what kind is it, you know, all different kinds of things. So they had to piece all this together. Well, what I'd find is kids would write it on one sheet of paper, leave for the day, and then come back and they'd get a new sheet of paper. And then 3 days into it, we've lost everything else, so we're back out, we're restarting, so we're wasting time. So what I did is I took these photos, I printed them off, large scale on a colored printer. And then I made them write on that photo the measurement for that part. Or, you know, there was something that we wanted to change. You know, we thought, well, this is a really good idea, but not good enough. We're going to change it, and we're going to do this. So then I had all these labeled photos. So then I knew there was going to be a time that we were going to get to a spot that I had to ask questions. I wasn't going to know how to make something. I maybe didn't have the tool or the machine to do it. So then I had all these labeled colored photos. I could go to my community resource and say, I need this. Like, where do I get this? How do I make this? You know, and they would have this part. It wouldn't just be me yakking at them and they wouldn't understand what I was asking for. So print those photos off. The more detail, the better. I will say, if you do this and you get like a trailer that's being produced, just because they're building them does not mean that every trailer is built the same. We had one trailer sitting there. They needed that trailer. They took it for a week. We were at a good point. We were working. And then I said, hey, I need another trailer. They brought another trailer in. None of the measurements were the same. So I was like, oh, okay, we're in trouble. You know, so we're 2 months into this thing. We've got half of it done. And so then we had to adjust our own. So we went out to where they've, you know, put up the tires and lights on them. And I had the boys measure 12 of them. Not one of them was the same. So we were like, oh, crap. So we kind of had to design our blueprints from there. The more detailed, the better, because if you enter the OIE deal, if that's your end goal, you have to put together a portfolio and your required blueprints. So they say hand-drawn or computer. From what I've seen in that contest on the portfolios, we're kind of still all over the board. There's not one set way of doing it. I will say with this project, there was 3 basic different layers. My blueprints were not the greatest, so we got hammered a little bit at that contest on them because he could not replicate the project off of my blueprints, which I knew that. I knew that was going to happen. So if you can buy the blueprints, then boom, you got it for your portfolio. You just put them in there. There's no rule saying you can't. We just didn't have access to those blueprints. So notes, details, all of that. Reading the blueprints. So we had some printed ones, and then we also had some other little things that came in, or a resource. We had a resource that worked for a trailer company, and he drew us some parts up, and the kids got them, and I got them, and I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea what these mean. So trying to read all that. So there's some sources I brought that help you with print reading. But my main thing, even with, if you're not building a project and you tell a kid, hey, you have to give me blueprints by the end of the week, you get these crazy drawn pictures that you have no idea what they even mean, right? So if you can find a way to provide a visual for them, something that they can build in front of them, and then look at it and draw on their paper, your pictures are a lot better and your blueprints are better when they get to you. I don't know how many times a kid is trying to explain to me what they want to build and it's not clicking. And I'll say, you know what? Here's an entire box of Legos. Go build it, come back to me, and then we'll talk about the blueprints. And so we got Legos here. There's a worksheet. It's the second, this one here. This is kind of gives you an idea of blueprint readings, but from 3D to, here's a bunch if you want to, whoever needs one. So a lot of kids struggle. You do a matching thing. You know, you've got the 3D image, and then you've got the top, the right view, the different views. Kids had a really hard time trying to figure out the answers to this. And so what I did is I got these Legos, and I just made the part. So they could put the part right in front of them, and they can look at the top view and understand the matching drawing, you know, when you have the different parts. Very simple to do. I mean, my niece made these. She's like 6. I said, make these, and she made them. So, you know, the kids can do it. Very simple. So I can look at the side view, I can look at the top view and understand that this is, you know, 3 rectangles when you're looking at the top view. And you can find it and match. So you can do all of that. There's some other ones. These are all ones that were from that different deal. So there's that. And then you might have blueprints if you Google pictures. Same thing. So you might end up with this. A kid that says, hey, I want to build this. Okay, great. What kind of metal do you need? What's your angles? All of this different stuff. Well, if they have a hard time seeing this, then Legos are great. Now don't laugh, but you can build little things that give them an idea, and they can look at it and kind of see, you know, different angles. Now it's not perfect. It's not to scale. We get that. But if they move their axles up here and their trailer's tipping, they understand, wait, that's in the wrong, we got to move it back. I would much rather learn that on a set of Legos than on a 40-foot trailer that has $7,000 axles on it, you know, placing those. Of course, you're out there watching them, but they kind of get an understanding here, and they feel better about the process. They understand what happens first when you're building a trailer towards, okay, we're going to build this, the neck of the trailer. How the heck are we going to attach it to, you know, the bottom of the frame? So they learn all that kind of with the Legos. It's a cheesy way, but it works. They understand it as far as that goes. Visual and hands-on. So you can spend 2 or 3 days in the classroom with them, letting them build stuff on Legos, and some of them are pretty dang creative. I mean, the Lego sets come with tires, wheels, everything. If you can build it on a trailer, you can get it in a Lego. It's crazy. So that was a really helpful activity for me. Seniors loved it. 8th graders loved it. Student engagement. One of the biggest problems that I've seen with the large-scale project was we would get so consumed with this one project that I would find myself not teaching like I need to teach. We'd have 2 or 3 kids that weren't involved, so they were in the classroom, and Mr. Lashley and Mr. Bradshaw would kind of watch them while I was out in the shop, because the project that we built this year was a $14,000 project. That's what we had in it. And so I didn't want it messed up, you know. So I was trying to do that, but then I was like, well, man, my teaching is not doing so hot. So I wanted to make sure that I figured out a way to engage everybody in this project. And towards the end of the project, around February, January, I finally think I had it figured out where everybody was involved and motivated. It's easy, it takes over. Use your senior mentorship. I was lucky to have 2 seniors that were great welders. I could turn them loose in the shop. I knew they were going to do an awesome job. So I decided, okay, I'm going to use these guys to help me. I knew that one of them was really good at stick welding, one of them was really good at cutting, and then I knew that my skills in MIG welding were all right. So what I tried to do was any part that required that skill, this group of students went with that kid, this group of students went with this kid, you know, and we split them up. And they all had tasks. Even on a large-scale project, if a kid doesn't know how to weld, that they can operate a grinder, there's a job for them. If they know how to cut, there's a job for them. So what we did was we kind of assembly lined it. This group of kids was in charge of cutting parts. This group of kids was in charge of welding overheads. There wasn't very many of those kids. There was one. So, you know, we had him doing overheads. We had these kids, I knew that this kid could weld a really good, you know, vertical weld, so he was doing that. We split all that up. There's no rule in that contest at OYE, if that's your end game, that says only 4 people can work on a trailer. It can be a chapter project, just your best 4 kids is going to present it at the contest because they're going to be the knowledgeable ones that need to present. So we used everybody. I had a class of 15 in one of my shop classes. All 15 students had a hand in building the trailer at some point in time. So whether that was cleaning welds, whether that was cutting parts, whether it was assembling, putting on decals, lights, wiring, all of that stuff. So we split all that up. And what I found was my students were more engaged. They wanted to work in the shop. They wanted to get here. They wanted to do this. And what I was finding is I wasn't building up all of these smaller projects that get in your way that don't get finished. They just get piled up. And so I was avoiding that. Now that I have them here, and then I'd hear them talk, well, next year, this is what we're going to build. You know, in the back of my mind, I'm going, oh, great. Okay. But this is what, you know, the wheels started to turn a little bit. Grading, so if you're like us, we had to do 2 grades a week. There's, in that packet, there's a progress chart that I used. It worked really well. It's very simple. It's basically a daily timesheet. So every time they went to work on the trailer or their project, they had to fill out the date, the task completed, the tools used, and the total hours. And the reason you can put whatever you want in those boxes. The reason I use this, it's an OYE portfolio. So this is the sheet that we used for that. So as the kids filled it out, boom, I gathered them all up, sifted through them, typed it all into our portfolio, and now we had already had this part made. We didn't have to rush back to finish that. So that's the report. I think that's about it on that. Managing work hours during class and outside of class. During the last session, I heard an ag teacher say, once you get married and have kids, like it changes your time, and I believe that. You know, I don't have kids, and I'm single, so I focus a lot on the shop deal. But one of the things I noticed was when you get a project like this going, it's pretty fun, and you really want to work on it. But I'd have to make myself stop and take some time to go do personal stuff. But the kids also wanted to work. They would ask me, we working Saturday night, we working Sunday morning, we working, you know, and I'm like, whoa, where'd your motivation come from? Kids, like, settle down. So you would get these kids motivated and they'd want to work, but you'd have to figure that out. So what I would say, set work hours and stick to them. Easier said than done, but do it. So what we did is I told them, I said, on Sundays we're not working any earlier than 3. Yeah, like 3 o'clock, I'll come in and do some stuff, fine. Because we had to on the deadline. My other suggestion would be start early on these projects. Start in July, get your stuff there, get everything ordered, what you need, and have it set in the shop so when they walk in August, you can do your safety tests and you can get started on your projects. We started November 19th on that trailer, and we're literally putting the decals and final touches on it as I was pulling it out of the shop to go to OIE. It was not, we were trying to get everything done. So, and we always laugh, we said we should have started a lot earlier. Well, I started earlier this time than I did last year, but it wasn't early enough. So start in July, that way you're not working every evening, every weekend to get things done. Timelines, so break your large scale projects up into goals. You know, you're going to have the axles on by this time. You're going to have the chassis built by this time. You're going to put the neck on at this time. It's going to be completely ready for the paint booth at this time. set those big dates ahead of time and really try to get to them. If one of those big dates gets behind on you, it dominoes, and then you're in trouble. So we had that happen to us. On the painting side of things, it came down to the Friday before the contest. It went to paint. I got it back Monday morning. It had to be in Oklahoma City ready to roll on Tuesday, which means we pulled an all-nighter to put the lights, the decals, the wires, everything on it. Don't recommend it, but we had to do it to get it done. So if we would have set goals ahead of time, it wouldn't have been a problem. So we could have got that scheduled. But that all keeps your students engaged. Community support and resources. Like I said, I'm not an expert on large-scale projects. It's just something that I've had to learn within the past couple of years to go with. These are 3 supplies and companies that I use that are great at asking questions. Redneck Trailer Supplies, Albright Steel, and Southwest Welding Supply are the companies that I use, and they've worked really well with me. I'm pretty sure Redneck Trailer Sales got a great laugh when I called the first year about axles, because I was like, I need an axle for a trailer. What kind? And I'm like, I have no idea. So I have Google pulled up. I have Mr. Renshaw in a text message, and I have this guy on the phone, and I'm like, I have no idea. This is what I'm building. This is what it weighs. And so he was able to walk me through. I think he got a kick out of it, but we got the right axle, so it was good. But then I actually went into their company, and they walked me through the warehouse. I got to see the different types. It's way better than Google. You can see, they told me that they explained the differences in the axles, what you needed for different parts, the coupler systems, all of that stuff. So they're really good to work with. Southwest Welding Supply is good. They're in Anadarko, but they're good about donating different things, if we need some supplies and that kind of stuff. And then Albright Steel is the same way. I had to call them because, like I said before, in the small scale projects, I just ordered some tubing, 11 gauge tubing or whatever, and it was good to go. Well, when I got to this project, it was, you need I-beam, you need different things, heavier metal. And then, some of the things you think about is, how do you get it into your shop once you get it there? Because it's big. Local businesses, painting resources, local welders, and past ag mechanics members. We have fortunate in Elgin to have a lot of past students that were on teams, so I use those. Those guys are happy to come in and show kids how to weld. They don't weld on the project, but they're right there with the kid, like when we're putting on the couplers. That's the most important part of the trailer. If the nose of that trailer breaks, you're liable. So, they're sitting there watching these kids put the beads on the front because they're experts at, that weld quality. So they're watching that. Local welders, and then painting resources. Anybody that has a paint booth, become their friend. So that maybe you can use the paint booth. They'll teach your kids how to use all of the equipment. When we did the smoker, the kids got to suit up. They got to paint. There was some drips and stuff on the paint, but they got to learn how to do it. And then, there's nothing in the rules that say you can't have your project painted by somebody else, but you need to have your kids go watch. Have them sit through the process to learn and take a photo of that process so they know. Our silver trailer that we made was a 40-foot trailer. The guy that had the paint booth that we used, it wasn't big enough, so I had to pay somebody to do it. We took it down there. They got to watch the process, and it was all good, and brought it back. So just find those resources if they're available. Funding's a big one. I'm fortunate at Elgin to have administration that will help us out, and make sure that we have what we need. So what we used, you have a special account for large-scale ag projects. We started that one when we started the smoker because I knew I cannot take $14,000 out of our activity fund. Mr. Bradshaw wouldn't approve of that for me. So, we were trying to figure out a way. So we opened an ag mech account for large-scale projects. The money we made off of the smoker went directly into that. So now we have like $7,000 in there to start with. So then, I knew this new project was $14,000. We only had $7,000, so half of it. So I went to my administration and said, this is what it's going to cost. What do you think? He said, go for it. We'll figure it out. Okay. So we used some of our 412 money. We talked to the State Department on that, and we were good on using the 412 money because it's supplies for your shop. They're learning. It's classroom materials. And then we used our activity funds. Our kids do fundraisers. Some ideas on that, you can make your smaller projects throughout the year. Designate whatever they sell for at your labor auction goes directly into the AgMech account versus your activity account. So we had some old stuff that had been left. We finished it, and we just told the people when we auctioned it off, whatever we make off of this is going into our big AgMech account. So that money went directly in there, and we got a little more funds to build things. So donations, you can always ask for help. People are willing to help you in the community, whether it's donating parts, paint, or anything like that. Time to help you, so those are all good options. Managing the work area space, I know some of you have small shops. I'm very fortunate to have a new shop that's large and a lot of room. And even though it is big, it does not take long to fill it up. So when we had that one going and some other small projects going on there, you had to step over everything to get around in there. It was packed. So we set some parameters. I broke the trailer project down into areas. Somebody was looking on the chassis, somebody was getting the lights and decals ready, somebody was working on the neck, cutting parts, and I just divided these up with tape in my shop. And I said, if you're working on this part, you don't come out of this section of tape. You're over here working. And I made sure we had the tools laid out. So use the whole shop, tape things off. When you get the trailer back from paint, for some reason they want to touch it. They I don't know. So I put this red tape around and said, if you went inside of the tape without my permission, it's not good. And they understood. So that's something we did there. Research and prepare for the tools that you're going to need for the project. Chances are, if it's something large scale, you're not going to have everything you need. We had to carry some sheet metal to bend it at another shop. So we went there and we learned how to use the machines there. Any brakes, that kind of stuff, we had to borrow that kind of equipment. The main thing was, I don't have a hoist in my shop, or a forklift. So everything we ordered had to be picked up by manpower. When we got this trailer chassis done and we were ready to put it on new stands, I had to go steal the other two ag classes, and I had about 30 kids out there, and we were picking this thing up, putting it where it needs to go. So my suggestion on tools would be buy a dang hoist or a forklift to use to be moving that stuff. I know when Albright, delivered my 40-foot I-beams, they pulled up in the truck and they're like, "Where's your forklift?" I'm like, "I don't have one." So, we figured out we'll call co-op, they'll get it on the ground, and then I had lined up 20 boys on each side and they carried it into the shop. So that's how we got started. But those are all things that are now on my want list to try to get. Make sure you have, all your consumables and stuff like that, because it's frustrating when you get 2 or 3 months into a project and you run out of something and it stops your production because you run out of gas, you run out of tips or whatever, and you got to stop to go get those things. So all little things that I learned that I really didn't run into on smaller projects, just the overwhelmingness of the larger project, that's what I was dealing with. Classroom resources, these are the 2 books. Some of you may cringe. I know I did but if you had Dr. Fields as your ag mechanics at OSU, it was a little rough for me. So when I figured out that I was using his book to actually learn how to do angles and formulas and stuff, I had to laugh a little bit because I was like, oh man. But this book is very helpful. It's also helpful for training for if you go to the National Ag Mech Contest, which is a whole new ball game. Since I got to experience that, but this has a lot of good formulas in it, and sample problems. So if you're not good at math and you need the answers to try to figure out how to do it, this is the book. So that one works really well. And then the blueprint book I was telling you about, this one I found stuffed away at Elgin. It's got all of the symbols. It's where the worksheet came from. It includes all the answers, how to read blueprints, how to draw blueprints. It's very helpful too, so a lot of my worksheets will come out of this. In hopes that some of this stuff will also cross over to maybe training a future state CDE team. It's just, it's a lot to take on. If you're focusing on that and then trying to focus on a large scale project, it's overwhelming. And that's what I found. We chose to do the OYE deal versus really prep for the state CDE thing. And that's personal preference or what your kids want to do, but they really enjoyed the AgMech project, and so that's the way we wanted to go. I'll touch base on this for anybody that wants to do it. You gotta have a work log, bill of materials, and your action photos. Same thing with your photos as SAE. If you're taking photos in the shop, kids don't have safety glasses on or the right equipment, you can't use the picture in the portfolio. So, and I don't know how many times I'd run across pictures because I'd be so focused on taking the picture that I'd look at it and be like, you don't even have your safety glasses on, so we can't use it. It'd be an awesome picture. So really stress on the safety thing. Bill of materials, I have to turn all my receipts into the school. I always make 2 copies. One goes in our funding deal, but the other one goes in that project's folder, so that I have what the cost of the metal was, how much we ordered, and then I'll write down what I used for that project, so that my bill of materials is basically already made whenever the project is finished. You just got to make it look nice and neat, put it in the portfolio. Work log, that was the student work log there that we used, and make it, you'll get some that have really good handwriting that you can like almost just copy it right on there. It's great. And you'll get some that you can't read that you'll have to trash. So at the end of the day, I would sit down and kind of fill one out myself. 5th hour got this done, 4th hour got this done, and kind of know where I was at. That was very helpful, so that at the end, all I had to do was photo the finished project and make our sell flyer. Everything else was done and ready to go. And I went ahead and I just have one of each, but you can see how things have changed from the first year. I learned a lot on the portfolio to the second year. So there's the 2 portfolio copies. You guys can take a look at those if you want, just to kind of see what it takes as far as pictures and that kind of stuff. Shop contract in that portfolio, there's or in that handout I gave you, there's a shop contract. I stole it from California FFA, to keep kids accountable for unfinished projects. It keeps them from piling up, because what it says is if you don't finish your shop project, like this is more for the student ones that like, I want to take this home when I'm done. Well, how are you going to pay for it? You're going to work something out with the chapter. And when is it going to be done by? Because a lot of those projects I found never got finished. They'd get piled up in the corner and be in my way. So I got this shop contract that said if it's not done by this time, I can scrap it, I can take it, whatever, and you're just out the money. So my admin looked at that. They were okay with it. Like I said, you can change it however you want. But I thought that was helpful because the kids, there's a little more buy-in, not just, okay, I'm going to make this table. Like it was, oh, it's a contract. I got to finish this thing, And then now if you got to give a semester test, you have a large-scale project, semester test grade, contract, it's all in one. Kind of made my life a little easier when it came to grading things. So that's what we did. So questions, I know I rolled through all of that. Anything I can answer for you?
Cost on the metal, like your kids building it, you just charge cost?
Yeah, so if they're building projects for themselves, I just cost the metal. I don't charge them anything for the consumables or anything like that because they fundraise. So I just tell them, you put the work in, yep, cost of metal.